Hello guys, welcome back to another episode here on African Confessions. There is a message that I want to share with you guys, and this message, it was sent to me by one of our admins. One of our listeners sent us this email. The email reads like this: I am a man who died, and when I died, I was dragged to the pit of hell by two demons. Hello, my brother. May you keep me anonymous. I am a 59-year-old man, and as a person whom through education I became so successful in life, and I started to live a life that was full of opulence. I used to have a lot of meetings with CEOs, but these CEOs that I used to have meetings with, they were not like regular normal CEOs, but most of them, they were CEOs who led multinational companies. My life's mantra was work, party, then you work, then you party again. Even though my parents were Christians, I chose to become an atheist because in my world and the wealth that I had acquired from a very young age, there was no space for God in my life because I had it all. So why would I even beg God for prosperity when I was already prosperous from a very young age? I had my first million in the bank at the age of 27. So for me, the idea of a God who will help me to prosper was so alien, because whenever my mother would ask me to pray, I would laugh in my heart and say, if God was there, how come those that starve themselves whilst they are praying, worshipping this God, will die without ever becoming a millionaire? Yet I had succeeded in life not because of a God who stays in the heavens, but because I knew that education and hard work was the key and the success to a better life. And yes, I had tested this and I had seen that indeed this was the truth. And I never believed in a thing called afterlife. My father was someone who believed that his ancestors were the ones that were guiding him throughout this life. So whenever my father would sit down with me, and when he would try to explain to me how his ancestors were the ones that were guiding me and were the ones that had given me all the success that I had in my life, I really found this to be absurd and funny to me. I was an atheist until the day that I died. The day that I died, I was supposed to go and play golf with a certain member of parliament, and thinking that I was in control. The next thing that happened is that I saw a very tall figure. This tall figure, I saw it as I was busy driving. I just saw a very tall figure that was at a distance. This tall figure that I saw, it was a giant, and this giant was way taller than the surrounding buildings. And as I kept on looking at that tall, mysterious figure that was walking in the middle of the town, I looked around to check if anyone was seeing this thing that I was looking at. That is when I found myself involved in a car crash. It was a violent collision that left me stuck in my car. I was awoken by darkness. I was unable to move. My body was just lying there, helpless on that hospital bed. My body was feeling strangely weightless. Panic then set in as I realized that I was no longer in the world that I knew. For a moment, I was confused because I was outside of my body, so I could not understand how come I could look at myself from another dimension. In the world that I had left behind, I then realized that my body was just lying lifeless in bed and I was in a coma. What people do not realize is that when one is in a coma, you can actually see everything that will be going on. It's only that you cannot communicate with the people that will be surrounding you. And I never imagined it, my brother, that one day I'll admit that indeed, if you are in a coma, you'll be dead physically, but your spirit will not have fully been disconnected from the body. It is not the oxygen that keeps the human body alive, but now I believe that it is the spirit that keeps your body from completely dying. When I found my spirit separated from my body, This was quite shocking to me. So I tried to scream when I found myself in another dimension. And this dimension, my brother, it is that we just cannot see it, but it is all around us. There are other beings that are walking just past us in another dimension, but they cannot touch us, they cannot speak with us, and they cannot reveal themselves to us unless they are allowed to do that. When I saw all these things that I saw, I started to scream. But what surprised me is that my voice, no matter how much I tried to scream, it was silenced, because there was a great divide that was between the dimension that I had found myself in and the dimension that I had left. I could hear myself screaming, but what will happen is that when I would scream, I would see that my voice would leave my body in form of waves. Then my voice, as soon as it would have left my mouth, it will go and hit that great divide that divides the dimensions. This great divide, it is in form of a glass. Even though I could hear myself screaming, but my relatives that were on the other side of the dimension, they could not even hear me. This terrified me, because the doctor who was attending me, he just looked at his machines. After he had done looking at his machines, it seemed as if there was something that he had seen on his machines that indicated that there was something wrong with me. So he rushed out of the ward where I was admitted into, and he went to the place where my parents and some of my few relatives were sitting. Then he spoke with them and they rushed back into the ward. That is when I had this thing that terrified me. The doctor who was with my father and my mother told my father that it was my father's call. If my father wanted the doctor to pull the plug, it was their call. The doctor was advising my family to take me off the oxygen breathing machine, and this terrified me. My parents could not hear me screaming as I was kneeling down before them, begging them not to take me off from the oxygen breathing machine, because as far as I knew, I was still alive. But because between me and the dimension in which they were stuck, there was a great glass wall that I could not even pass. Even though I could see them clearly, I kept on screaming because I knew that I was dying, and I saw other people who were coming over to the dimension where I was. I saw that glass wall coming down so that they can pass over into the next life. These people that I saw coming over into that dimension where I was, I then noticed that all of them had recently died in that hospital. No one spoke to each other because everyone had a journey of his own. As I kept on screaming, that is when one woman, whom I presumed to be dead, she walked past me. Then as he walked past me, then she spoke with me without ever looking at me. She kept on walking. Then she said, "If you keep on screaming, they will soon be here to take you by force." When she spoke with me, she kept on walking and she never looked back. So when she said that if you keep on screaming like this, they will soon be here to take you by force, then I started to follow her because I wanted to know. I asked her, who is coming to take me by force? Where should I go? Then that woman, as I tried to speak with her, she exited the hospital. So these people, my brother, what they were doing is that to them it seemed as if the natural physical laws that are in this dimension, to them it didn't even affect them at all, because all of those dead people that were dying in that hospital, they were exiting the hospital through whatever place that they saw fit. Some of them, they were walking out of the window without falling down. Some of them, they were going through the walls. None of them ever used the door. So I tried following that woman. That is when I got lost. I kept on walking in that hospital and I could not find my way back to that ward where I was admitted into. When I saw that I was now lost in that hospital, that is when I thought of an idea to read those information boards that are in the hospital. But what happened truly terrified me, because when I looked at this other hospital information board that had all the direction to different wards, I saw that suddenly I could not even read my own mother tongue. I even failed to read simple English, and this even terrified me further. So I sat down, then I started to cry. When I cried, as I was crying, I then fell asleep. What woke me up was I felt a searing pain that was in my chest. My chest was so painful, the kind of a pain that I was feeling. It was as if someone was stabbing me in the chest with 1,000 needles, as if my very soul was being torn apart from my body. The pain that I felt was like someone was trying to peel off my skin using a sharp razor blade. I woke up and I was screaming. And when I woke up, when I tried to run away, the first thing that I noticed was this foul smell that smelled like rotten eggs, and I couldn't see anymore because the whole hospital was surrounded by total darkness. There is that darkness that we know in this dimension, but there is another darkness. It has such a heaviness on it that you can feel that the whole place is now dark. When I woke up, that is the darkness that I found that confronted me. Then when I was trying to look through the darkness, there was a horrific thing that was standing in front of me, because it seemed as if there was someone that suddenly switched on the light, and that person wanted to see the horrific creature that was standing in front of me. I looked down and I saw a very terrifying beast. It was a horned creature and it grew large, and that horrific creature that was standing in front of me, I saw that it had fallen pregnant, and I saw that the pregnancy was growing by the seconds. Then that creature went into the labor pains. Then it lay on the hospital floor. Then it started to give birth. This was quite terrifying to me when that creature gave birth to another terrifying creature. It was quite a horrific scene, and their eyes were burning with evil. I then realized that these were demons. With the best of terror, I understood what was going to happen next, because those two demons then got hold of me and there was no escape for me anymore. Those two demons dragged me to hell. As they were dragging me, there was this other rod that was full of sharp rocks. As they were dragging me, I then looked back, but to my surprise, I saw that the whole world was now surrounded by darkness. The only thing that I could see at a distance was that hospital where those demons had dragged me from. We were walking on a road. It was a one-way road. It was quite a big road, and that road, it was full of sharp rocks, and those sharp rocks, the way that they were inserted into the road, those sharp rocks were tearing my flesh away. Those demons didn't even care as they continued to drag me down that road, and those sharp rocks, they were tearing at my essence. They occasionally would stop then as if they would be resting. Then they would come to the place where they would have left me so as to inspect me, just to check if there was enough damage that was made to my body. And I watched helplessly as my body was ripped off into several pieces. The pain was beyond description, an unending agony that seemed to stretch for an eternity. My thoughts were muddled and I couldn't comprehend how I had ended up in this nightmare. The world around me was nothing but a barren wasteland. We finally reached my resting place. Like we say in this world, if we bury our loved one, we will think that this is their final resting place, but far from it, my brother. I finally reached my resting place, and the area that they said was going to be my final resting place, it was quite a terrifying place, because as I looked around, I saw sharp mountains that surrounded me. The whole world around me was nothing but a barren wasteland. There were mountains that could cut a man's body in half. Smoke was coming from everywhere, and I saw that I was surrounded by rivers of molten lava and rocks that were so sharp that they could cut you in half. The air was thick with the stench of burning sulfur. My surroundings echoed with screams of other tormented souls, even though I could not exactly see who was screaming in pain. Each and every one of those people that were screaming, it seemed as if they were in their own final resting place that was filled with a hellish torment. As I was pulled deeper into this infernal abyss, the demons began to taunt me with visions of my past sins. They showed me the moments when I was laughing that there's no such thing as an afterlife. I saw myself hating others, plotting against my co-workers, the times that I had been cruel and selfish. The reason why I had managed to climb up the corporate ladder so fast, it was because of my cruel and my selfishness. I was forced to relive my darkest memories, and the guilt and shame totally consumed me. But the worst part was the feeling of hopelessness. In this world, the only reason why we can keep on going for another day, it is because of the word called hope. Nothing can defeat hope, even if you are a poor man. But I bet with you that a poor man in this dimension is far much greater than the richest man that will find himself in hell, because the difference between them is hope. A poor man in this dimension can still have access to hope, but once you are in hell, there is no hope, because if you are a poor man and if you are thirsting for water, you know that even if you go to your neighbor's house and if you ask for a glass of water, chances are quite high that your neighbor will give you that glass of water. Right there, my brother, that is hope in action. But in hell, you will feel so thirsty. But in hell, I felt so thirsty, and I knew that there was no hope for me to ever find water in such a desolate place. I cried so much, and I screamed for death to come and take me. But on that day when I was in hell, but for those days when I was in hell, death chose to ignore me, and that truly hurt me. There was no escape from this relentless torment, no respite from the pain. I longed for death, but the death was nothing but a distant memory, a luxury that I could never have again. In that world, time had lost all of its meaning. It seemed as if in that dimension in which I was stuck in, the way that they calculate their time, it's so different from the way that we calculate our time. Hence, time had lost all meaning. As I writhed in the clutches of the demon, I begged for mercy, but they only laughed and they continued to inflict their horrors upon me. Each day bled into the next, and the nightmares grew worse, because what those demons used to do is that whenever they would see that they have not tormented you enough, it seemed as if they had a rewind button, because you would actually see them rewinding your life before your eyes. Then those demons will start to torment you over and over again. Then one day, as I lay broken and defeated, a glimmer of light appeared. But when this glimmer of light appeared, at first it was in the distance. I looked up and I thought that maybe it was just another trick that was being performed by these demons, because these demons had performed so many tricks so as to give me false hope. So this was like a distant hope that I could barely dare to believe, because I had had enough of being made to believe in a thing that wasn't going to rescue me. As I strained my eyes, I saw two figures that had a blinding light approaching. These men were angels, and when they came to the place where I was, I laughed at them, because I thought that this was just another magic trick that was being played on me by those two demons who were tormenting me, who had dragged me to hell, because this is what they used to do from the moment that they dragged me to hell. after tormenting me, the demons will then transform themselves, and one day they became like my mother and the other one became like my father. When I saw my father and my mother standing in front of me, I was really happy because I thought that finally my father and my mother yet finally came to rescue me. And as my mother comforted me, that is when those demons transformed themselves and they became two beautiful women that I had lusted in the previous life that I had lived. These two women, I knew them very well. The other woman, I used to work with her and I had tried to date her for several years, but she had refused my offer, for she was married. When I saw her standing in front of me with her body so perfect and her being naked, and the other woman whom also I had lusted after in the previous life that I had lived, and when they desperately walked towards me as if they were so desperate for my love, I rose up from the place where I had fallen down. Then I started to touch those two beautiful women as if we were about to make love. When I was on top of one of the women trying to make love to her, that is when I realized that I was on top of one of those horrific demons. Then those demons transformed themselves back into their terrifying state, and I found myself on top of a sharp rock, and I had inserted my manhood into that sharp rock, and I was acting as if I was making love to a woman. To me, I thought that I was making love to a woman, but as I had inserted my manhood into that sharp rock, the rock had shredded my manhood into several pieces. This was quite painful for me, so I started to cry. As I was crying, those demons laughed. They laughed and they laughed. Then they started to torment me over and over again. So when those two angels suddenly appeared before us, I started to laugh because when I looked at those angels, me and those two angels, we were like clones. Growing up, we had always been told that angels are white in their appearance. We were always told that angels or any other heavenly beings, they are white in appearance. So when I saw those two black men that looked exactly like me, as if we were identical triplets, I started to laugh and I cried as I laughed, thinking that my time to be tormented had arrived again. I thought that this was just another magic trick. But what surprised me is that as the angels descended upon us, those demons then suddenly ran and they hid themselves behind a rock that was close to the place where they were tormenting me. And the way that they were scared, I then saw that something was wrong somewhere. That is when I realized that this was not a trick. The angels then started to speak as if they were rebuking those two demons, but I could not even hear the kind of a language that they were using. But it seemed as if the angels and the demons understood each other. The other thing that I noticed is that as those angels were busy rebuking those demons, I saw that the demons could not look at those angels directly. They were looking sideways as they were speaking with those demons. The way that those angels were talking is like when you put a phone on loudspeaker during a call. Can you say that the phone is speaking, or you can say that the other person who is on the other side of the line who would have called you is the one who is speaking through the phone? This is what happened with those angels. It was like they were synchronized to speak all at once, and the person who was speaking through those angels, it seemed as if that person was really angry with the way that he was rebuking those demons. After those angels had rebuked those demons, the demons ran and hid themselves in a cave that was just nearby. I saw that they were afraid of the men who had spoken through these angels. In a flash, that is when I found myself being lifted from the abyss, and I was held in the arms of those angels. Their soothing presence was a stark contrast to the torment that I had endured. They whispered words of comfort to me. That is when one of those two men spoke with me and told me everything that happens at the time of conception, the moment when you are created in your mother's womb. He told me that the moment that I was created in my mother's womb, and in the spiritual realm, they were also created. But the three of us, we were all created from the same spirit or from the same seed. That is why we looked so identical. And when I was born, they became my guardian angels. And I asked them about the demon, about those two demons that had been tormenting me for such a long time before those angels had came to rescue me. That angel then told me that we were all created from the same spiritual seed, and we are almost like one being. But he told me that as I grew older, sin had separated me from those two angels and had brought me much closer to that demon that had came to drag me when I was in hospital. But on that day, I was told that I had found mercy in the eyes of the Lord, because death had tried to cheat the Creator by snatching me away before my time. As I was carried away from that nightmarish realm, I understood that I had been given a second chance, a chance to redeem myself and to escape the horrors of hell. So when those two men told me that we were all created from the same spiritual seed, I then begged them to take me with them wherever they were going to, because it seemed as if from the place that they had came from, it was quite a nice place, but they refused to take me back. As we were standing right next to the bed where my body was lying in that hospital ward, I begged them, but they refused. When I kept begging them to take me with them, then they both took hold of me and they forced me back into my body. When I woke up, I vowed to change and to make amends for my past sins and to live a life worthy of the forgiveness that I had been granted. When I spoke with my parents, I was shocked to hear that I had been in this coma for almost a week. Yo, dear listeners, right there was a message that was forwarded to me by one of our admins. It was a message that was sent to us by one of our listeners. If you have any story that you want to share with us, please do not hesitate to contact us via our email address. Strange things do happen in this world.